Federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from detaining or deporting Imran Ahmed. He's a British-born researcher who focuses on countering online hate and misinformation, but the Trump administration accuses him of trying to censor viewpoints that he doesn't agree with. Ahmed leads a group called the Center for Countering Digital Hate, and he is one of 5 European nationals recently barred entry to the U.S. by the State Department.
This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Yes, you heard that correctly. This mofo, Imran Ahmed, CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate, filed a 31-page complaint suing the U.S. government, specifically Secretary Rubio, Undersecretary Rogers, AG Pam Bondi, and DHS Kristi Noem on Christmas Eve, the day after it was announced Imran Ahmed was being sanctioned. If you're not up to speed with what this is about, go back to the video that I did several days ago, seen here, and it will give you an explanation as to what went down right before Christmas. I would have to assume that Imran knew that this announcement was coming and had his lawsuit all ready, because the next day he uploaded on December 24, 2025 to make it look like the Trump administration was being a jerk to do this right before Christmas. Mind you, this dickhead is of Muslim origin and does not believe in God, according to Wikipedia. The entire document is calculated. Just look at where he filed this. U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. Imran Ahmed is a British citizen and U.S. green card resident holder since March of 2024. And the question that I have is, why would he file in New York when the U.S. charity entity and his family all live in Washington, D.C.? Could it have anything to do with the fact that the new communist Islamist mayor Mamdani might somehow come to his defense? As I've said before, Mamdani is the male version of Meghan Markle, and you can bet that this guy will insert himself some way, somehow, just because he loves the attention. So a quick summary of the events. Ahmed's core allegation, on December 23rd, 2025, the government announced sanctions against Ahmed under INA Section 273A 4C, claiming his activities have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. This includes visa restrictions, removal proceedings, and barring him from the U.S., which Imran says translates to imminent arrests, detention, and deportations. Heaven forbid separating him from his U.S. citizen wife and U.S. citizen child in D.C. It's all part of the optics, painting the evil Trump administration tearing families apart. This asinine complaint wants people to think that Imran Ahmed is a victim of an authoritarian regime under Trump, citing retaliation for Ahmed's biased work as founder and CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is a nonprofit he alleges to have started in 2019, despite official UK records dictating otherwise. Imran's so-called life work of protecting human rights and civil liberties online by researching and exposing what they called hate speech, disinformation, and inadequate content moderation on social media platforms. Ahmed, who is now doing the liberal media propaganda tour, whines to everyone that his advocacy work is all protected speech under the First Amendment, and the government's move is unconstitutional retaliation, violating the Fifth Amendment, INA, and DHS policies. His lawsuit is trying to convince the court, as well as the public, on vacating these sanctions, declare them illegal, and dictate any arrest, detention, deportation, unless proven lawful. This complaint frames this as part of a pattern of the Trump administration's feds using immigration as a bludgeon to silence non-citizens. And in parallel, we have the PR machine working overtime to paint this picture of this victim. Do you all not see the irony in all of this? It's literally like an arsonist suing the fire department for putting out the fire that he started. Imran Ahmed has built his entire radical leftist career and CCDH's mission around demanding that social media giants censor, deplatform, and moderate content they deem problematic. CCDH's whole shtick is pressuring platforms to silence voices spreading what they label as hate speech or disinformation. It's laughable that this guy was given an O1 visa for extraordinary abilities. I mean, seriously, if they can give this guy an O1 visa, then imagine what they gave Prince Harry. And we're going to get to that a little later on because it's all tied together.
If you kept interrupting me during the course of this conversation, which you have, and I perceive that to be motivated by the fact that you're from a Muslim background and I'm from a Jewish background, would that make that hate speech?
No.
My self-perception is that.
No, it's just that you're really slow at talking and my brain's already finished your sentence
But
for
my
you.
perception isn't that. You walked out of the room, and when you walk out of here, I'm going to turn to these guys and say, well, that was a lot of hate speech, wasn't
That's
it?
fine. You can say that that's hate speech.
And then you can be prosecuted.
It's absolutely fine for you to say that's hate speech if you want.
I just want to point out that this guy truly does think he is the smartest person in the room and that what he says is the law of the land. There is no wiggle room to see other perspectives. The way that this guy speaks to people is so condescending and arrogant.
Absolutely fine for you to say that's hate speech if you want.
And then you can be prosecuted.
If me interrupting you is hate speech, and that's your definition of it, I tell you what, you are being disrespectful.
I mean, this is just beyond rude.
To the people who do receive hate speech. The
Like me.
enormous number of people who receive hate speech, real, clear,
So do I.
undeniable hate speech.
So do I.
And your sophistry right now is both transparent
It's
and
not.
deeply disrespectful. And I warn you that most of your listeners will think to themselves, actually, Constantine's being a bit of a dickhead right now.
No, Imran, you're the dickhead.
That's interesting that you say that, because what I'm doing is I'm stress testing your argument. And the point I'm making to you is a person's self-perception can be manipulated. People can lie about how they perceive their the things that they experience. And sometimes people will use the law against other people when it's badly written. Don't you think that's true?
Isn't this what Harry and Meghan do all the time? And now this guy Imran Ahmed is doing the same exact thing?
You think that's true?
I do think it's true.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm not really being a dickhead. I'm stress testing your argument. And calling me a dickhead might be considered hate speech.
No, it's not hate speech. It's just good observation.
Fine.
But now the government's boot is up his ass for his speech, and suddenly he's clutching his pearls and screaming, "My First Amendment rights have been violated." Bitch, please. Trying to take away other people's freedom of speech is not covered under basic First Amendment rights, Imran.
I mean, you seem to be arguing that your free speech rights are being violated, which is precisely what the administration argues you are doing. Do you have a sense as to why your organization and why you in particular were targeted?
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues that we've had is that we take on, of course, some of the biggest corporations in America, companies like X, Elon Musk, Meta, and others, and ChatGPT, so OpenAI. And these companies, which typically aren't able to be held accountable properly, whether that is through the courts because of the way that US law is structured, that they are the only companies in America whose products really aren't subject to any liability if they cause harm to people, even when they persuade kids to take their own lives, for example. But we think that this is another example of these companies which have tried to evade responsibility using their big money to try and influence things in politics. And we've seen companies like X, for example, suing us before because they didn't like being held accountable.
Not only did this mass manipulator not answer the question, but he completely deflected away from talking about the First Amendment and free speech because he knows very well that he was violating individual people's rights, like Katie Hopkins, where the CCDH and Imran Ahmed were openly calling for the social media platforms to deplatform Katie Hopkins everywhere.
I have never asked to be liked. I have never asked to be agreed with, and I will never apologise for anything that I have ever said. And as long as you afford me that courtesy, I extend it to you every day of the week. And it's an unusual thing. For a very long time there, I was the most hated woman. I was the biggest in Britain. I was vilified. I was mocked. I was universally loathed. I won't just, brush that away as that doesn't matter. Oh, it didn't touch the sides. You've got a skin of a rhino. That's not true. You know, you the
especially if you
powerful
think you're doing it
you know you're doing it
for
with
the
best.
right reasons,
Your
and
heart
you're
knows the
trying.
truth. Yeah.
You're trying to break through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I will absolutely acknowledge the people who wish to silence you, powerful people, NGOs, charities, heads of religions. They will push you until you swing. They will push you until you end your life in an effort to silence you, for sure.
So this douchebag claims that he's an advocate for human rights and civil liberties online. So why wasn't Katie Hopkins afforded that? Instead, Imran Ahmed led the charge on getting this woman ostracized from the online space. And through the campaigns and brigading, subjected Katie to a wave of online abuse. So he can't sit there and say, well, you know, it's really the platforms that don't want to be held accountable. We all know that what Imran Ahmed is saying is bullshit. It was always about silencing dissent if it did not align with the narratives that the left had been forcing onto us, such as accepting these vaccines when people had legitimate questions. And I think many people are seeing this now, the harm that these people cause by preventing people from having open debate.
You know, I owe America so much.
Why?
It'll set me off. But, you know, 80 million Americans went out and voted for Trump. I believe he won the last election as well, having been at the installation of Biden. But 80 million Americans in our darkest hour went out and said, no, we're getting this guy back. And, you know, your anthem and things, the shining light on the hill, the burning beacon, that for me, at a point where it was particularly hard, America is the shining light on the hill. And I can't even begin to tell you, people in Great Britain don't speak for us. That ridiculous little London mayor that Trump disinvited from the state banquet, Kim Jong-Starmer, they don't speak for us. Decent British people are cheering you on. And that was one of the proudest things about that Unite the Kingdom rally that I come to you from, is the aerial views of that. I felt like it connected me directly with American people. Yeah. For the first time, we were able to say, no, look, here we are. We're with you.
We have been...
That is who Imran Ahmed and his dark money funders wanted to silence. So now let's go ahead and dig into what is actually being said in this document pertaining to the background. Section A, it says, Mr. Ahmed's decision to found CCDH to prevent online discrimination and hate. So this is the reason why he started, or is alleging that he started, the CCDH. It says here, Mr. Ahmed, a citizen of the United Kingdom and lawful permanent resident of the United States. He moved to the United States from the United Kingdom in 2021 with an O1 visa, a visa for immigrants who possess extraordinary ability in the science, arts, education, business, or athletics. Mr. Ahmed applied for an adjustment of status, submitting an application for legal permanent resident status. His application was granted on March 29, 2024, and he is now a legal permanent resident of the United States. Mr. Ahmed is married to a U.S. citizen, and his child is a U.S. citizen. You see, they need to make those points there. Goes on to say, Mr. Ahmed was born in Manchester, England in 1978 and attended Manchester Grammar School. His family is Pashtun, one of the largest ethnic groups in Afghanistan. So now remember, Imran Ahmed is Pashtun, Pakistani descent from Afghanistan. So what are we supposed to interpret from this? Because the way that I'm reading it is they know that our mind is going to go to September 11, 2001. We know what happened the day before Imran Ahmed turned 23. But the fact that this guy talks about the Taliban by saying the Taliban were Pashtun, you know, the same background that he is, and Mr. Ahmed felt a strong sense of purpose to devote his life to addressing evil in the world. If I had to guess, and keep in mind Imran was in the UK when the towers fell, the next day I'm pretty sure people were talking about Islam and Muslims and probably even looking at him a little differently. I don't think the evil that he's talking about are the Taliban-backed al-Qaeda terrorists who flew 2 planes into the World Trade Center, killing 3,000 people. I think the evil that he's thinking is the people who are commenting about Islam and Muslims more than anything else. Like, he doesn't give a shit that 3,000 people died that day and why America has such a bad taste in our mouth for Islam, especially New Yorkers like myself, who actually lost loved ones on that horrific and unforgettable day. I get the impression that his view is similar to that of Mamdani. Remember when Mamdani was like, yeah, his aunt was taking the train after 9/11 and people were looking at her funny because of her hijab? I get the same kind of vibe here, that these people really don't care that over 3,000 people died that day as a result of this political ideology that wants to see Americans dead because they don't like the concept of freedom. So it makes perfect sense as to why this guy feels so comfortable thinking that he can shut other people up. Now, this is just my perspective, but I believe that there is a specific reason as to why he just didn't flat out say terrorism. Anyhow, continues. It says, in 2016, while working in British politics, Mr. Ahmed grew concerned by the rise in anti-Semitism and racism across the United Kingdom, where he was living at the time. He observed a sharp rise in anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and far-right organizing in the United Kingdom, particularly during the campaign surrounding the Brexit referendum, and when the far-right party, Britain First, launched the dangerous conspiracy theory that the EU was attempting to import Muslims and Black people to destroy white citizens. People believe that, especially with the UN replacement migration document that says that they are bringing in all these people, then that's your right. Well, at least in America, you can say that without the fear of getting locked up. So now when you look between 2001 and 2015, there seems to be no issue or problem with evil in the world. But specifically now in 2016, of course, you have Donald Trump coming onto the scene and you have these populist movements starting to threaten Agenda 2030 and this New World Order that they were sending us all down. Donald Trump threw a wrench in that. As we all see now, why they're so mad. And it's why there was such a focus to be able to control the online space and the information that we were fed and what we could say. In November 2016, Joe Cox, a member of parliament and Mr. Ahmed's colleague, was shot and stabbed in a brutal, politically motivated murder by a man who screamed "Britain first" and "Keep Britain independent" during the attack. Ms. Cox's killer was alleged to have accessed several websites about the Nazis, the KKK, the Waffen-SS, and Israel on the days before killing Cox. Inspired and devastated by this tragedy, Mr. Ahmed formed the CCDH in 2019 to call attention to the enormous problem of digitally driven disinformation and hate online. So what was going on in November of 2016? Donald Trump gets elected. But we also find out that Meghan and Harry are dating, and all of a sudden now he is bringing up topics around the hate and racism that Meghan is getting. He makes it a point to talk about this lone wolf who is right-wing, but fails to talk about the major Islamist terrorist attacks in 2017. Like, I get that he was devastated by Ms. Joe Cox getting murdered, but why did it take almost 3 years later for him to then be inspired to set up this CCDH, allegedly? So let's go ahead and talk about this setup. The Center for Countering Digital Hate registered in the UK on October 19, 2018, originally known as Brixton Endeavours Limited up until August of 2019, to which it became the Center for Countering Digital Hate, otherwise known as the CCDH. Now, around the same time that Brixton Endeavours changed its name to the Center for Countering Digital Hate, we had Meghan Markle and her campaign on making everybody know how trolled she is and how much hate she gets. Okay? Now, what's really interesting about this organization is that in the UK, it's not registered as a charity. Instead, it's presented as a non-governmental organization, otherwise known as an NGO, and it maintains an extensive network of ties to government officials and policymakers. Yet, As a UK registered private company limited by guarantee, it qualifies for exemptions under Section 477 of the Companies Act 2006, allowing small companies to skip the mandatory audits and keep much of their financial details private. Now, the next logical question to ask here is why is it that they're not registered as a charity in the UK, but registered here in the United States as a charity? I mean, I can only assume that it's for the tax benefits. Now, what's kind of suspect is that Imran states that he founded this company in 2019. However, his name is nowhere found on any of the registrations or the board of trustees until 2021. So why does Imran say that he founded this? Well, it has something to do with a campaign called Stop Funding Fake News, which launched on social media in 2019. So now, according to Influence Watch, Stop Funding Fake News is an informal organization which campaigns to remove advertisers from websites accused of circulating misleading and fabricated information. The organization began in February of 2019, same time Meghan was crying racism and the palace had to issue new social media guidelines. But I digress. It was then brought under the direction of the CCDH in May of 2020. After operating in the shadows and trying to remain anonymous, this group helped to run Jeremy Corbyn out of the Labour Party leadership while tanking the news site Canary after starting a boycott of their advertisers. And according to reports, all roads lead back to the CCDH being behind it. Among other shadowy dark money campaigns that were run was Stop Hate for Profit. And this is where we started to see, unbeknownst to many, because not many were paying attention, the involvement of Harry and Meghan. At that time, we slowly started to see Harry and Meghan join forces with Color of Change, Common Sense Media, Free Press, NAACP. And remember, at that time in 2020, when Harry came over here, he was very vocal about Facebook pulling ads from accounts that did not align with certain narratives being labeled as mis and disinformation. Look, I still maintain that Harry and Meghan came over to the United States on a covert mission to not only help the Biden campaign and interfere with the 2020 election, but also undermine the First Amendment. I've been saying this from day one since 2021 when I came onto the scene here. I've not been wrong yet, especially with what we are seeing unfolding right now. I find it very hard to believe that the royal family did not know what Harry and Meghan were planning on doing when they got here. Very hard to believe, especially with the people that they had been surrounded by. Sarah Latham, you had Hillary Clinton going over to Frogmore Cottage. You then had all of these former employees and Secret Service from the Obama administration. Come on. But let's go back to Imran Ahmed, because that's what this video is about, and talk about the appointments that he was holding. Specifically, the charity Victim Support, which he was appointed as a trustee on November 14, 2019, and then resigned on November 26, 2021. What's really interesting here is that he resigned literally a week after Prince Harry dropped his Aspen Commission on Information Disorder report. So you might be asking yourself right now, why is TRG so fixated on Imran Ahmed being a trustee of Victim Support? Well, it's because TRG is very interested in this organization's president, and that would be the Princess Royal. Yes, Princess Anne supports Victim Support and is the president of the England and Wales and patron of Victim Support Scotland. So you better believe Princess Anne knew who Imran Ahmed was if he was a trustee in this organization. Now, I'm not saying that Princess Anne is involved in any of this. I'm just saying it's a small world. I'm really happy to see that this organization not only helps adults, but it also helps young people, especially vulnerable girls. But what's interesting is when you go to the types of sex crimes that are committed against young people, and we look at grooming, I'm sorry, but this doesn't represent the reality of what's happening in the UK with these British girls being groomed and gang raped. Like, a boy scrolling online is not the image of a grooming gang victim. So to me, this tells me there's really not much that they're doing to address this ethnic problem that they have in their country. It'd be really nice to see Princess Anne bring awareness to this resource to help these girls. You have to wonder, why is it that the entire royal family has been silent around this scandal? Princess Anne could really be the hero here, but, has remained silent as well. And she's the president of this organization. She's not a patron. She is the president. And then you have this arrogant prick, Imran Ahmed, sitting as a trustee of your organization. Like, come on, folks. We don't see what's going on here. Like, you got to be really thick. Now, if that doesn't sway you, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of board members or trustees that were serving on the CCDH's board in the early days, particularly Lord Jonathan Oates. We'll get to James McSweeney in tomorrow's video, but let's end with who Lord Jonathan Oates is. So Lord Johnny Oates is the former chief of staff to former UK Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg. Yeah, the same Nick Clegg that went over to Facebook and was head of the global moderation. So a little bit about Johnny. He received a life peerage in 2015 for his public relations and political campaign management. Yes, folks, he is a spin doctor. And you want to know who worked for Johnny? Well, that would be James Holt. Yes, James Holt worked under Johnny Oates while both were part of Nick Clegg's inner circle during the UK coalition government. Relationships and roles. While Johnny Oates served as Nick Clegg's chief of staff from 2010 to 2015, James Holt held the position of deputy director of communications for the Liberal Democrats. So Jimmy Jammy Holt was part of the spin team that reported through the communications and strategy structure overseen by Oates as chief of staff. So it sounds like to me, Jimmy Jam James has a lot of experience in creating narratives and spin. And what a coincidence that Jimmy Jam James goes to work for the royal family in 2016, just in time for little old Meg to come onto the global scene. Along with former DHS from the Obama administration, Heather Wong, right by Harry's side as his personal assistant, they were all getting ready to kick off this military-grade censorship operation onto the unsuspecting world. And here we are. And in tomorrow's video, wait till you see how Christopher Boozy fits into all of this. Now, if the reports that are coming out stating that Prince Harry's set to regain his armed security in the UK, and this armed security also comes with immunity, then I think it's pretty safe to say that this is really about covering everyone's asses, including the royal family. We all know that this had nothing to do with Harry fearing for his safety, because we have witnessed over the past 5 years Harry flying here and there and everywhere under the radar, nobody knowing about it, and he was fine. And with all of what's going on here, especially with Venezuela, and if you looked at my other video talking about that, and the election machines, and all roads leading back to the UK and George Soros, you'll understand that these two literally have been in the thick of it. I think this is a good place to stop. I will be back tomorrow, so just make sure that you like this video and double check to make sure that you're subscribed so you get notified tomorrow, because you're not going to want to miss what I have in store for tomorrow. But let me know your thoughts so far on what you think. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.